Welcome to the SmartKeys podcast. Today, we are going to tackle a frustration that I think every single person listening has felt at least once, if not 100 times, in the last few years. You call into a hybrid meeting. You're the remote person. You're up on the screen on the wall. The people in the room are having this lively debate. Someone cracks a joke. They turn to the whiteboard to sketch something out. And you are just stuck. You are a static image. You can't turn your head. You can't move closer. You are, for all intents and purposes, a second-class citizen in that meeting.
Oh, it's the classic ghost in the machine problem, isn't it? You have a voice and you have a face, but you don't have a body. And in a physical workplace, having a body, having physical presence, that equals agency. Without it, you're just an observer.
Exactly. And that is precisely why we're doing a deep dive today into a technology that promises to solve exactly that problem. We're exploring the world of telepresence robots based on a fantastic, really comprehensive guide by Felix Römer from smartkeys.org. And before anyone, rolls their eyes and thinks of some clunky sci-fi movie prop, the data suggests this is becoming a serious enterprise tool.
It really is. Römer's analysis is fascinating because he moves past the novelty factor so quickly and gets right into the why. Why are companies actually spending money on this?
Yeah.
And the answer is the hybrid work isn't going away. But the current tools, Zoom, Teams, standard video conferencing, they've hit a hard ceiling. They solve communication, but they do not solve presence.
Right. And to set the stage, let's define what we are actually looking at here. Because when I say robot, people might imagine some humanoid butler walking around, but the reality Felix describes is much more functional, isn't it?
Think form follows function, absolutely. At its core, a telepresence robot is a video conferencing stack camera, screen, mic, speaker mounted on a mobile base. But the defining feature, the thing that separates it from a Zoom call on an iPad, is that you, the remote user, control the movement.
Ah, so you're not just dialing a number.
No, you are logging into a physical avatar that you can actually drive around a real space.
That distinction, driving versus dialing, that feels key. And looking at the market context from the source, this isn't some niche experiment anymore. Römer cites some really telling figures. In 2024, the market was valued at about $0.13 billion. But the projection,
It goes up to $0.41 billion by 2035.
it's a huge leap.
That's a compound annual growth rate of over 11%. That is healthy, sustained growth. It tells us that real money is moving into this space. And it's being driven by converging tech 5G, better batteries, and AI meeting very real needs in sectors like healthcare and manufacturing.
It's that classic case of the technology finally catching up to the use case.
Exactly. We're moving from cool toy to business necessity.
Okay, so let's get into the actual experience of using one of these. Because Felix walks through the user flow, and it sounds surprisingly intuitive, almost like a video game.
It's designed to be low friction. You open your laptop at home, you log into a browser interface, and suddenly you're not looking at a grid of faces. You're looking down a hallway in an office 3,000 miles away.
And you just use the arrow keys.
You press the arrow keys on your keyboard or drag your mouse, and you move forward. You are physically propelling this device.
The sensory difference is what struck me in the reading. It's this idea of active viewing versus passive viewing.
Precisely. On a standard video call, you see what the webcam shows you. You're at the mercy of whoever set up the laptop.
Right. If they stand off camera, you just miss it.
You miss it. With a robot, if you want to see the whiteboard in the corner, you turn the robot. If you want to inspect a prototype on a table, you drive up to it and you zoom in. You have autonomy.
You're not just watching a meeting, you're inhabiting the room.
Yeah.
Okay, but for that to work, the hardware has to be pretty sophisticated. You can't just strap an old tablet to a remote control car. The source material gets pretty technical about vision systems. We need to talk about PTZ.
Right. Pan, tilt, zoom. This is completely non-negotiable for a professional experience. If you have a fixed camera, you have tunnel vision. You're constantly crashing into door frames because you have no peripheral awareness.
And the article highlights the Double 3 specifically. It uses dual 13-megapixel PTZ cameras.
It does.
So what's the benefit of the dual setup? Why two?
It creates a unified field of view. One camera gives you that wide-angle awareness so you can navigate safely. That's your driving view, basically. The other can zoom in with high fidelity on a document or a person's face. It mimics how human eyes work. We have peripheral vision plus focus vision. You need both.
And then there's Ava Robotics, which takes a slightly different approach with front and side cameras.
Yes, Ava is interesting because they're trying to solve that situational awareness gap. With side cameras, you can see if someone is walking up to you from the hallway while you're talking to someone in front of you. It makes the presence feel much less vulnerable.
Yeah, that's a great word for it, vulnerable. Because if you can't hear or see what's around you, you feel exposed. Which leads us to audio. The article talks about the cocktail party effect.
This is the holy grail of audio engineering. The human brain is amazing at filtering out background noise to focus on one voice. Microphones are generally terrible at it.
So if you drive this thing into a busy factory or a cafeteria...
You'll just get a wall of static. A standard mic won't pick up a thing.
So how do these devices handle it?
They use what are called beamforming microphone arrays. It's essentially multiple microphones working together. They detect where the sound is coming from and steer the listening focus toward that sound while suppressing the other noise.
And they have better speakers too, I assume.
Oh, they need amplified speakers. You have to be loud enough to interrupt a conversation if you need to. You can't be a timid whisper in the corner.
Right. Now, the part that gives me anxiety, the driving. I'm picturing myself lagging out due to bad internet and driving down a flight of stairs or crashing into the CEO.
And that's where the AI comes in. This is where the obstacle detection is changing the game. The article highlights the Omni Pro as a leader here. It has collision avoidance sensors. It knows not to hit the CEO's shins. But more importantly, it has auto docking.
Which solves the battery anxiety.
Exactly. When you're done, you don't have to perfectly navigate onto a tiny charging pad, which is actually really hard to do remotely.
You just hit a button.
You just hit dock, and the robot uses its sensors to park itself. But there's another feature on the Omni Pro that I think is even more important for the human connection, and that's neck tilt.
Neck tilt. This sounds like such a minor mechanical detail. Why does that matter?
Yeah. It sounds minor, but biologically, it's huge. Think about how we signal attention. We nod. We look up when someone stands. We look down when we're reading something together.
I see.
A robot with a fixed screen feels like an airport kiosk. A robot that can tilt its head to look you in the eye feels more like a person. It creates empathy. It signals, I am listening.
That's a profound insight. It moves the tech from being a surveillance tool to a collaboration partner. Now, the article makes a clear distinction that I want to unpack, the mobile versus stationary decision.
Yes. And this is rule number 1. Do not buy wheels if you don't need them.
So when do we ditch the wheels?
If the interaction always happens in one specific spot, think about a check-in desk at a hospital or a podium in a lecture hall. You don't need it to roam the corridors. For those cases, Felix suggests tablet-based solutions like the Kubi or PadBot.
And these are essentially motorized mounts for a tablet, right? They just sit on a desk.
Exactly. You can still pan and tilt, look around the room, but you can't drive away. They're much cheaper and easier to maintain.
But if your workflow is dynamic inspecting a production line, doing rounds in a hospital ward, you have to go mobile.
Correct. Context is king. You have to analyze the workflow before you buy the hardware.
Let's pivot to the strategic value. Because cool tech is fun, but businesses don't spend $500 million on fun. They spend it on ROI. Felix calls healthcare the killer app for telepresence. Why is that sector leading the charge?
It comes down to the scarcity of expertise. A specialist, a top neurologist, say, can't physically be in 10 hospitals at once, but with a telepresence robot, they can perform virtual rounds.
Walk me through that. How is it different from just FaceTiming a nurse?
It's about independence and infection control. Let's say you have an infectious outbreak. Every time a doctor enters that room physically, they have to gown up, PPE, masks, the whole thing. That takes 10 minutes.
And then 10 minutes to get out of it.
Massive downtime. And resource usage. With a robot, the doctor logs in, checks the patient monitors with the Zoom camera, talks to the patient, and leaves. Zero transmission risk, zero PPE cost, zero time wasted. It's safer and faster.
That's incredibly compelling. What about outside healthcare? Manufacturing is another big one mentioned.
In manufacturing, time is money, period. If a production line stops, every minute of downtime costs thousands. Traditionally, you'd have to fly a specialist out or try to describe the problem over the phone.
It's making a sort of clunkus sound.
Exactly. Useless. With a robot parked at the factory, the specialist logs in from their home office, drives to the line, and diagnoses it in 10 minutes.
So let's talk numbers, the return on investment. The article breaks this down into hard and soft ROI.
Right. Hard ROI is the math your CFO will love. It's the total cost of ownership, TCO, versus travel savings. So you calculate the cost of the robot, the cloud subscription, maintenance. Let's say that runs you $5,000 to $10,000 over a couple of years.
Which sounds like a lot until you book one last-minute international flight.
Exactly. One trip with flights, hotels, per diem. That can easily hit $5,000. If that robot saves you just 2 of those trips a year, it has paid for itself.
And the soft ROI.
That's agility. What's the value of solving a problem today instead of next Tuesday? What is the value of a manager being able to drop in on a remote team just to say hi and build culture? It keeps projects moving.
I also want to touch on education because there was a really heartwarming use case there.
For chronically ill or homebound children, yes. We aren't just talking about watching a lecture. A robot allows that child to hang out in the hallway between classes. They can move from group to group. It provides social agency. They aren't just a face on a screen. They are a presence in the room.
That concept of agency keeps coming back. It's the core theme here. But we have to be realists. This is the SmartKeys podcast, not a sales brochure. Felix dedicates a big part of the text to the unsexy realities.
Gotchas. And there are plenty. The biggest enemy of the telepresence robot is the elevator.
The Faraday cage effect.
Right. You drive into the elevator, the doors close, it's a metal box, the Wi-Fi signal dies, and you are now a brick.
So what's the fix?
You cannot rely on standard office Wi-Fi. You need a seamless roaming network, or ideally 4G or 5G integration.
So the robot has its own cell connection.
Exactly. But even then, you have physical thresholds. The bumps on the floor, thick carpets, door widths.
Things you would never even think about.
You'd be amazed. A thick carpet can create so much friction it drains the battery in 20 minutes.
So the advice here is, don't guess.
Do a site survey. Physically walk the paths the robot will take. Check for Wi-Fi dead spots. Check for glare from windows. You have to map the terrain.
And then there's the digital terrain, security. We are putting a high-def camera and microphone on wheels behind our corporate firewall.
It's a CO's nightmare. But it's a managed endpoint, and it has to be treated with the same rigor as a laptop. End-to-end encryption is mandatory. You cannot have that video feed being intercepted.
Especially in healthcare with HIPAA.
HIPAA changes everything. You need audit trails. You need to know who logged in, when, where they drove, and you often need to hard disable recording.
Okay, so assuming we've checked the Wi-Fi, measured the doors, secured the encryption, how do we actually deploy? The Big Bang approach seems risky.
It's a recipe for disaster. The strategy Felix outlines is the pilot strategy. Start with a 30 to 60-day pilot. And this is crucial. Don't test it in the easy open plan conference room.
Test it on the hardest route.
Exactly. Send it to the noisy factory floor, drive it through the heavy fire doors. You need to find the failure points while the stakes are low.
And I imagine the humans need training too. Robot etiquette.
It sounds funny, but yes. People need to know. Don't throw a code over it. Don't kick it. Don't be afraid to talk to it. You have to normalize its presence so it becomes a tool, not a spectacle.
So looking forward, where does this all go? The article projects out to 2035. What's the big shift?
The shift is from driving to collaborating. Right now, operating these bots takes cognitive load. You have to pay attention. As AI gets better, the navigation will become fully autonomous.
So I could just say, go to conference room B.
Exactly. You say go to room B, and you spend the transit time reading your notes.
Yeah.
The friction of operating the device disappears.
And you're left with pure presence.
You're left with pure presence. It brings us back to that core idea of agency. True hybrid work requires equal footing. Telepresence robots offer the one thing Zoom can't: the ability to act on your environment, to move, to explore, to be spontaneous.
So for the listeners sitting at their desk right now thinking about this, what's the one practical takeaway?
Don't try to solve everything at once. Identify one high-value workflow. Maybe it's the morning rounds. Maybe it's site oversight for a construction manager. Test that one workflow. Measure the savings. If it works, then you scale.
Start small, think big, and watch out for the elevator doors.
Words to live by.
Well, that is a wrap on this deep dive. I hope this has given you a new perspective on what it means to be somewhere in the digital age. A huge thank you to everyone for tuning in to the SmartKeys podcast.
It's been a pleasure to unpack this.
If you found this breakdown valuable and want to keep your finger on the pulse of the future of work, please make sure to subscribe. We have plenty more insights coming down the pipeline.
And do yourself a favor, click the link in the show notes and read the full article by Felix Römer. We've covered the highlights, but the technical breakdowns and cost tables are incredibly useful if you're actually planning a purchase.
Absolutely. Until next time, keep learning, stay curious, and maybe we'll see you or your avatar in the hallways soon. Bye for now.